Hi, my name is Barrie Crampton. Welcome to another edition of My Life and Times in the Motor Trade. Somebody suggested in the comments that I should actually call it Confessions of a Car Dealer. So I think I'm probably going to change it to that. But Confessions of a Car Dealer, life's harder than you die, My Life and Times in the Motor Trade. This episode's called You Can't Put an Old Head on Young Shoulders. I saw a quote today, and it may as well have been written about me. To be old and wise, first you must be young and stupid. Whenever the motor trade moves into recession, which happens far too often for my liking, dealers try to reduce their expenses. Usually the first thing to suffer is the training program. This has an adverse effect on sales, creating a downward spiral, which is difficult to reverse unless the economy recovers on its own, and you can't help it. In the 1990s, I worked for a BMW dealership. When I joined them, the economy was pretty dire, but there'd been a period where the yuppies, as they were called, were ordering rare cars and selling their place on the waiting list to someone who had even more money than they did. Salesmen had become order takers, and anyone could make money in this situation. Unfortunately, as the saying goes, if you don't use it, you lose it. And this applied to sales skills and techniques, as all that was needed was your trusty Mont Blanc and a blank order form. I'd previously worked at a volume franchise in an environment where if you snooze, you lose. If you didn't keep in touch with your prospects and they came in and signed up on your day off, you lost the deal. This was particularly annoying to me, as I'd already learned the value of prospecting and I'd perfected my own system, which I operated religiously. When it came to showroom traffic, it was every man for themselves. I was the newest member of the team and had the worst desk, as it was positioned furthest away from all three doors. However, I did have the best view. I had to be inventive to get to the customers first. When it was too cold to stand outside waiting to pounce, and my colleague in the service department didn't give me the heads up, one of my favourite tricks was to ring the other salesman's phone. If I could see somebody coming, I'd ring his phone and he'd be picking the phone up and go, hello, is anyone there? And I was sprinting past him, greeting the customer as he or she entered the showroom. However, I didn't always have it all my own way. The other salesmen had a few tricks of their own, and plenty of my deals were short. One of the old hands used to shout across the showroom to a new customer, "Hello there, I haven't seen you for ages. How are you?" He'd then walk across to him, lighting his pipe as he went, when the fact was he'd never seen him before in his life. The customer was usually trying to remember where he'd met this friendly salesman as he was led back to his desk and away from the other staff. Now, the first time I witnessed this coincided with St. Bruno, as I used to call him. That was the time he got locked in the toilets when one of the mops accidentally fell out of the cleaning cupboard and got jammed right underneath the door handle of the toilet. I mean, what are the chances of that happening? Although that job was pretty good, it was a great product. We were selling VW Audi. Good showroom. To this day, probably one of the only people who actually paid me exactly what they owed me right up until finishing. And it was another place that I was sorry I left too. I should have stayed there. One of the things I used to do when I was prospecting was look through the situation's vacant column. I wasn't looking for another job. What I was looking for was jobs advertised with company car. I would then ring the number, ask to speak to the transport manager. I believe you've got a new member of staff coming on board. We sell Volkswagen Audi. Can I quote you for your business, please? I sold quite a few cars from it, you know. That was proactive rather than waiting for customers to walk in the showroom. One day, however, I saw my dream job advertised at a BMW dealership, and I immediately sent my CV, which I just happened to have in my briefcase. I then proceeded to pester the life out of the sales manager until she gave me an interview. The showroom was fantastic, the cars were unbelievable. There was a brilliant red 850 BMW coupe right in the middle of the showroom. There was even a lift to the accounts department, a computer system which I'd never used before, which controlled invoicing, and a prospect system. They had their own canteen, each salesman had a pager, the wage structure was excellent and fair, there was a pension scheme, and a very, very generous petrol allowance. This was my idea of sales nirvana. On my second interview, I was introduced to the boss. He was way ahead of his time and nothing like any of my previous employers. If I was lucky enough to get this job, I could learn a lot for him. I wanted this job more than any other job I'd ever had. But it meant I had to impress him so much that he would choose me over hundreds of other applicants for this job. Hundreds, honestly. In years gone by, he'd also had a Porsche dealership. As a boy doing my paper round, it was their advertisements that I'd always looked for. When I was delivering the Sunday Times to the posh houses in St Anne's, I used to stop and read their adverts religiously. So I decided to go directly for his ego, and it seemed to work. My story must have touched his heart because although there were applicants with BMW experience and applicants more highly qualified in the field, my enthusiasm and persistence got me the job. I joined them a week later. My first day was a real eye-opener. The sales manager apologised to me as they'd only got a Dolphin Grey Metallic BMW 325 SE Auto for me to use. One of my demonstrators was a duck egg blue Vauxhall Chevette ES. Vinyl seats, no heated rear screen, no radio. So I was finding it difficult not to grin and kiss the bonnet of this beautiful shiny new Beamer. Yes, I thought, no more parking miles away from the entrance to the Poacher's nightclub, so I won't be seen getting out of the Loser Cruiser. I was introduced to the other three members of the team. They all seemed like good lads. One of them looked like a wing commander, and he bore a striking resemblance to Basil Fawlty. He was a real gentleman, and what he didn't know about BMWs wasn't worth knowing. I remember the day the guy I was to be partnered with shook my hand, and he used to shake your hand like that, and he nearly pulled my arm out of my socket. I nicknamed him Jonah because he seemed to jinx my sales whenever he was around. He also had a habit of saying one thing but meaning another. He was a really great guy, and you couldn't help but like him. On my first day, I heard a customer tell him that he'd decided to buy a BMW from another dealer. Taking it on the chin, Jonah replied, "Oh dear, was it something I said?" Never thinking for one moment that it was. He was speechless when the customer replied, "Yes, actually it was." Now, I'd just taken a drink out of my coffee and I was nearly choking. I had to spit the coffee back in the cup. The other lads had heard it too, but having worked with Jonah for a long time, they did a better job of concealing their amusement and committed the incident to memory to be used against him in the future. Jonah had innocently upset the customer by saying that the majority of his customers didn't take out finance. Now, the guy took it as a slur, thinking Jonah meant he couldn't afford it, but what he actually meant was Basil, wing commander, knew more about lease purchase than he did. But the customer wanted finance, and you know, he took it as the wrong way. He took it as an insult, and we all learned a valuable lesson. We worked in teams of two, and it soon became apparent that these guys had had it far too easy for the past 5 or 6 years. As a result, their skills had suffered. Suffered, too much of a harsh word. A better description would be submerged. All it needed was the right button pressing, and their skills would rise to the surface. Basil was actually being serious as he recounted how terrible it was on some occasions in the past. They were so busy, they didn't have time to go to the toilet. Or the times when people had come to pick up the new cars and they also wanted to order another car for next year. How I wished I'd been there then, but times were changing and people were sometimes in need of a little persuasion and assurance before committing themselves. However, this gave me a slight advantage for a very short period of time, but I realise now that I was no better than them. They welcomed me and helped me settle in immediately. I had a lucky start. I was a little more hungry than they were. They were certainly more polite than me, taking it in turns to speak to customers and sharing sales calls, whereas I still had the volume franchise mentality. Don't get between me and a customer unless you want to get trampled. I got off the mark very quickly and I had a good run of sales. The boss was very pleased with my performance. A one off the cuff remark he made, "You lot had better watch it or Barrie will eat your lunch," soon landed me with a new nickname, the Closer. Now I like this name and I became a legend in my own mind. The other lads came in for some tremendous stick, and although we got on really well, it still caused resentment. To them I was the Closer. Ha! My arse. I did notice now that the other lads seemed to get off the chairs a lot faster than they had in the past. Jonah, who wasn't the fittest guy I'd ever met, was now beating me to customers. He'd previously been the brunt of one of my wind-ups when the day before he was going on holiday, I made an announcement over the tannoy. "This is your captain speaking. Will passenger Jonah please run to the back of the plane as I can't get the front wheel off the runway." I was starting to wish the boss had kept his mouth shut. His remark had hit the blow all tanks button. Even with his new turn of pace, things still went from bad to worse for Jonah, and he had a dreadful run of luck. After spending hours going through different specifications and demonstrating a vehicle, I overheard another customer tell him that he would definitely be back to buy one in about 18 months. That was followed by a very deep sigh from Jonah. Nothing was going right for him, and he was given a letter in which it was suggested he'd be given time to look for another job. We were all absolutely gutted. We all liked Jonah, and as a group decided to confront the boss, asking him to reconsider his decision, promising we'd all work together and help increase his sales. Initially, the boss didn't look impressed, and I expected him to explode with us all confronted him. He pointed out to us that he was in charge and that he actually did know what he was doing. And trust me, to this day, he did, and I know he did. But he took a deep breath and I thought, this is it. But then I saw his expression change from one of anger to a kind of Hamlet moment. Remember the old cigars? I could almost see a light bulb over his head, pound signs in his eyes, as he smiled and realised that he'd just created the sales executives equivalent of there was 4 of us, but of the Musketeers. On the way out of the meeting, I couldn't help thinking that he'd calmed down remarkably quickly. I wondered if this had been the boss's plan all along, and if he should have been nominated for an Oscar for his performance. The bottom line was, he'd just got us all to promise to work harder, and he didn't have to pay us any more money. It was a win-win. The boss was someone I admired. Having started from scratch, he built the business up himself. His motto for the business being CQI, which stood for Continuous Quality Improvement. He wanted to be second to none. When he applied for BS 9000 accreditation, he invited all the staff out to a nearby hotel where he'd reserved the banqueting suite. There was lots of lovely food laid on. He paid for everybody's drinks the whole night. At the end of the night, he made a speech in which he explained to us that he didn't want to get the accreditation by just doing the minimum to achieve the standard. He wanted to do as much as humanly possible. After his speech, I think most of us would have followed him into a war zone. We all came out of the meeting feeling like we were going to be instrumental in building the best BMW dealership in the world. Each and every one of us was prepared to do whatever it took to blitz the accreditation standards, no matter how much extra work was involved. The penny dropped. He'd only gone and done it again. This guy, honestly, he was so good. The boss knew that we could all improve certain aspects of our sales techniques, The areas in which we were lacking needed to be identified and improved. At about the same time, BMW UK had realised that dealers had cut back on their training programmes just when they really needed to be at their most professional, to secure sales and market penetration. So BMW decided that they would provide training at their offices in Bracknell for free. Our boss quickly decided that the company would take advantage of BMW's generosity and booked us all on the full programme of training courses. As salesmen on commission, we only made money when actually in the showroom selling cars. We were all very unhappy as we couldn't see the long-term benefits of the training. I was also unhappy at the prospect of the course as I thought I knew everything already. And the other lads were unhappy because they don't want to be away from their families. I didn't totally understand this as the fourth member of the team had a wife who seemed to be horrible to him, and she made his life a misery. She used to make special trips to the dealership to tell him off. I assumed this was because she couldn't wait till he got home, and so he couldn't just put the phone down and go for a brew, leaving her to berate the inside of the waste bin. He just used to put the phone in the waste bin and walk off, leave her talking, and you could hear this like echoing of her shouting at him. The hotel that the boss booked us into was excellent, and I for one want to blame the fourth member of the team if he'd have asked to live at the training centre. The courses usually lasted 2 to 3 days, and it was a 4-hour drive to get there. And we finished about 4:30 on Friday. The traffic was gridlocked. After one course, it took me till 1 in the morning to get home, meaning that this training malarkey was now interfering with my social life, and my social life had improved exponentially since I'd got a new BMW demonstrator. I was really fed up. We were all still working well together as a team, but would take every opportunity to wind each other up. I was convinced I was God's gift to sales. I wasn't paying much attention on my latest course, and I was staring out the window. And it was while I was staring out the window that I came up with what I considered to be the ultimate wind-up. So I managed to procure a piece of letter-headed paper from the training centre and started to compose a letter, which from memory read something like this. Dear Barrie, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to attend our training courses. However, over the last few weeks, it's become blatantly obvious to us that we cannot teach you anything further. Therefore, it would be a waste of our resources, and your time would certainly be better employed in the showroom selling our product. I only wish I could say the same about your colleagues. I'll be writing to your dealer principal and asking him to increase their individual training programs in an attempt to bring them up to your exemplary standards. I cannot express how much we appreciate your input, and we will be working hard to implement your new ideas in order to improve the content of our future courses. Should you ever tire of selling cars, please be assured that there will always be a place for you on our training team. Yours, Head of Training, BMW. I know in order for my plan to work, the circumstances of the letter's arrival had to be believable. I was going to fax it from BMW head office, but my typing was so atrocious, I needed help to make the letter look authentic. When I got back to the dealership, I had to recruit one of the secretaries to be my accomplice. I asked her to type my words onto the letterhead, correcting the grammar and spelling, but keeping the sarcasm and insults. Then, as we had a plain paper fax, I asked her to photocopy the letter and place it in the incoming fax tray as if it had just been sent from BMW. My accomplice was then to ring Basil and tell him that there was an urgent fax for the sales department. Basil, thinking it was a faxed order or a fleet inquiry or a purchase order, I knew he'd get there as fast as he possibly could. I sat at my desk and waited for the fun to start and my opportunity to gloat. Unfortunately, best laid plans and sod's law joined forces. My phone rang, the secretary told me that our accountant had walked past before Basil got there, noticed there was a fax, picked it out of the tray before she could stop in, and after scanning through it, walked off, shaking his head in disbelief. Never mind, I thought, surely he'll realise it was a joke and bring it back. Sadly, he didn't. Neither did my boss. I thought his judgment must have been impaired because secretly he liked me, and also because the secretary's letter writing skills had overpowered my sense of humour. She'd paraphrased my letter and actually made it believable. The boss and I were very much alike. We shared a lot of the same interests out of work. We both loved gadgets, sport and motorbikes, and we were both Geminis. I could usually tell what he was thinking. Unfortunately, he could also tell what I was thinking too, sometimes even before I thought it. I was sat at my desk, trying desperately to formulate Plan B, which up to now consisted of clutching my chest, falling to the floor, feigning a heart attack and waiting for an ambulance, or going along with a scam, pretending the letter was genuine and hoping he didn't find out the truth until I'd cleared my personal effects from my desk and caught the bus home. My desk was next to the sales manager's office, and I could see him through the window, waving the letter about and gesticulating towards the other lads. Then the moment I was dreading. A voice over the tannoy boomed, "All salesmen to the sales manager's office." He didn't get straight to the point, but it soon became clear the meeting was primarily to congratulate me and then to take the opportunity to browbeat the other salesmen into accepting that they were in desperate need of intensive training. I had no choice but to come clean immediately, as I'd got too much respect for the boss to let him say anything that could be used against him in the future. I had to stop things before they went too far. The one thing we all dreaded was when the boss put his hands in his pockets and leaned back in his chair. We knew we were in for a lecture. We also knew that he would usually have good reason to lecture us. When I owned up and explained that it was a joke, he did all of the above. Then he went a previously unseen shade of purple. Never missing an opportunity to kick a member of the team when he's down, Basil remarked later that the colour was Daytona Violet. You could only get that colour in an M5, and the reason I hadn't seen that particular shade was that I was useless and I'd never sold anything that expensive before. The boss gave us all a rollicking, which lasted about 2 hours. As you would expect, I came off worst. The closer, yours truly, got his wake-up call, and with lots more training courses, natural order was restored to the rest of the team. Jonah was no longer on the crest of a slump, and he was eventually appointed used car sales manager. And as I sit here, and it was 18 years later when I wrote this blog, it's now 28 years later, I'm kicking myself. I thought I knew better, and I wasted a golden opportunity at that BMW dealer's. I wonder how many more cars I'd have sold if I'd actually listened and learned from the people who had my best interest at heart and were trying to help me become a better salesman. I read a comment the other day on Twitter, and it was, "He who laughs last thinks slowest." I'm starting to think I should have this on my headstone. I promise you that it was only as I was writing the blog that it became apparent all these years later. The boss wasn't taken in by the letter. He saw the perfect opportunity and moment and manipulated the situation to get all the sales team to agree not only to attend BMW training courses, but to volunteer for even more in-house training after work on a Wednesday night. And it was me who got the blame. Game, set and match. Boss, I salute you. They should put your face on money. It was a battle of wits. I was unarmed. The only thing you were lacking was a menacing laugh and a white cat to stroke. If you're watching this today, and I hope you are, Mr. Blenkinsop, I'd really like to take this opportunity to apologise yet again for squandering a great opportunity and for causing the bomb scare. That's a story for another time. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye bye.